Yeah.
Thank you, Johnny. So, see if this works. All right. So, interview scheduling overall is a topic which I will talk about today. So, interview scheduling is a super important part of the recruiting process in many, many ways, but nobody likes the calendar Tetris or like the email ping pong back and forth, which is required to actually find the right time slot for the right candidate to come in and in the end close the deal. Because, all right, and because it's fair. So overall, interview scheduling is something which is like a fundamental part of recruitment. So when I worked on recruitment process outsourcing, I learned from many, many ways that that interview scheduling and coordination, in some cases, takes up to 45% of the entire recruiting process. So that's what I will talk about today. Is like this, let's say, this area of talent acquisition and recruitment, which is not the most attractive in many ways, but which is a super important part for us to automate and to optimize. So very quickly about myself. So my name is Soeren, and I'm heading talent acquisition at Zalando overall. Just a quick overview about who Zalando is. So I already saw a few hands, but just a quickly overview. Like, who does not know Zalando? No hands? All right, so then don't have to tell too much about it. But overall, Zalando, like, we are on a mission to become the starting point for fashion, and starting point for fashion means for us, so we want to, like, we are already the #1 fashion destination in Europe, but we want to become way more like the starting point for fashion, and overall grow way more than we have done so far. So where are we today? So we are today active in 17 different countries and different markets. So we have around 2,000 brands which are represented on our platform. We have like employees from more than 130 nations, and overall are now like close to 16,000 employees. We're around 5 billion or a bit more than 5 billion, close to 6 billion in revenue, and also like growing 20% year on year. So, and with growth of 20% year on year as 11 years old company, which is already at around 6 billion in revenue, you can imagine that talent acquisition is like a massive topic for us. And for us, it's not just about like how can we hire more, but how can we be more efficient, how can we use better talents to in the end fulfill like our passion and our vision to become the starting point for fashion in Europe. So overall, let me take you through like the journey which we have started in automation. So when like I started at Zalando 2 years ago, and what we did is we analyzed like what are our processes in talent acquisition, what are our processes in recruitment, and how do we actually run our processes. So we could have said, oh well, like you're beautiful just as you are, but overall the topic was like they were not really customer focused and customer obsessed. So and customer orientation and customer centricity is something which is deep in the DNA of Zalando, and so we started again looking at what are our processes and how can we actually optimize this. So we had a look at what are the moments that matters and where do we actually add value, and what are all the other moments. So what are all the other steps in the process? And overall for us, this was like a guiding decision to say everything which is a moment that matters for a candidate or for a hiring manager or for an interviewer, and where we can add value with the work which we do, that's something where we want to double down on excellence and experience and actually dealing with this point in the process. And everything else, more or less, when it doesn't add value, when it is not a moment that matters for the people involved in the process, let's automate it. Let's have a look at how can we actually optimize it, how can we make it lean, and how can we make like have systems in the end doing that. So that was like a very important point for us to understand what are actually the moments that matters for us and how can we deal with that. What we did then is we had a look, and that's like a short extract from like one area of our candidate experience survey. We originally have like this run in Qualtrics, and when we had a look at this, we saw that like scheduling of interviews is for us, it takes around 30% of our, let's say, workload in talent acquisition. And then we had to look at, okay, well, how happy are people with interview scheduling? So we understood interview scheduling is something, when you have a look here, it's like, it says it's not important but highly rated. So for us, that means, okay, well, how can we automate this? Because it's not a point which then like really influences candidate experience, but it's something which has to work properly and has to work properly at scale, because just in Berlin we have more than 12,000 on-site interviews a year, so that overall this was like a big scale which we wanted to automate. So then we thought, oh no, nobody likes interview scheduling, right? But it's an important part of the process, so how can we actually deal with it? And we did is we had to look at what our coordinators actually do today and what do we actually want them to do in the future. So for us it was important, interview coordination or like interview scheduling might not be like the most important topic in the entire process, but there are many, many things which actually the coordinators do on a day-to-day basis which add huge amount of value. When people come to on-site interviews, make sure that they feel welcomed. make sure that like when interviewer is off sick and they have to jump in right away to solve for something or so on, to in the end create memorable experiences for the candidates, but like in the end don't sit there and just like spend a month, like hours and hours and days in the end to like do the interview Tetris and find out like when can we actually do that. So our goal is to have the interview coordinators becoming candidate experience owners and specialists, so that they really own the candidate experience, and with that really focus not so much anymore on like the manual and admin task around interview scheduling. So we ask ourselves the question, how can we automate this manual task overall while giving the coordinators the time to really create memorable experiences with candidates. And that was something which was for us like a super important topic. So we went through the different process steps and analyzed what are actually the common pain points in the system or in the process. So the first one I already mentioned a few times, calendar Tetris. And calendar Tetris, like for us, which means when people come on site for on-site interviews, they usually have somewhere between 3 and 6 on-site interviews in one go, so that coordinators spend a lot of time opening up 6 different calendars and trying to find out when is the best time for them to come in and which interviewer has time when. Second one is manually updating several calendar invites as soon as there are any changes. So we're receiving candidate and interviewer availabilities which are not matching. They had to deal with different time zones. We have offices in different locations in different time zones. They had to find rooms, generating video conferences links, find interview replacements, and overall really manage the interviewer, like on the one hand from a preference point of view, but also from a workload point of view to understand what are actually the things which we can like give to an interviewer and which we can expect from an interviewer, and what are the different things which we can also avoid. For example, when we interview lots of backend engineers, like how can we avoid that always same interviewers interview the people, and how can we actually make sure that we have like a good balance and workload throughout this. What we did then is we did like a lot of market research. So we had to try to understand what kind of tools are out there, what kind of processes. So we thought about like, okay, like there are chatbots out there, how can we actually do the email ping pong with chatbots? We had to look at automation solutions, and then we also had to look at, okay, how can we actually, what other tools are out there? So we decided overall that to go for a pilot process, or like a pilot in the end, which is for us a proof of concept. So what we decided on is that because we are using Greenhouse, is that we use the tool GoodTime. So we ran like a pilot process, like pilot for several months with GoodTime on like our tech hiring. And overall, then in the end, decided that like the process overall worked so well, so that we decided to go with this tool, this partner. So in the beginning, which was interesting, when we started our pilot, when we started our proof of concept, is we in the beginning, like together with our provider, with GoodTime, we did like an efficiency study. So in the efficiency study, there were really like consultants coming in and sitting with like a clock beside our coordinators and measuring how much time do they actually take in different steps of the process, and how long does it take when they get a task until they really finished it. And something which was really interesting is when we have a look at the results. Here we can see like the HR screening to schedule, like the manual task to schedule an HR screening. It took around 5 hours, 90 minutes on average. So with the tool, after the tool implementation, they were able to do this in 55 seconds. For a phone interview with a tech team or with a hiring manager, we saw that like this went down from 6 minutes 35 to 56 seconds. And even like an on-site interview, we were able to schedule instead of 16 minutes within less than 4 minutes. And that was something which was super interesting for us to, on the one hand, understand, yes, we can be way faster, but then on the other hand, also when we have a look at the time distribution to schedule an on-site interview, we can see that there were like lots of different tools, there were lots of different tasks which they had to do. So they spent 42% in the ATS in Greenhouse. They spent 26.7% playing calendar Tetris, and like in the end, hopefully being successful with that. And then also like working with spreadsheets and so on. So overall for us, it was clear that like during the proof of concept, during the pilot, we saw that A, yeah, it's more efficient, we are faster. B, we can like harmonize the process and also give our coordinators more time in the end to do quality work. So overall, we decided, yes, these results for us were very successful and very promising. So we rolled it out not only for tech recruitment, but we rolled it out to the entire company. And overall, at the moment, we cover with that approximately 3,500 hires a year. And we are just about to roll it out also to the logistics sites for us. So how does it work? Overall, what we did is we connected Greenhouse with GoodTime, and then overall loads our Google Calendar integrations. So that what we can see is that Greenhouse has, and GoodTime, we have like an API, so it shares like job and candidate infos. We see like the interview dates and times, and also GoodTime is connected to our Google Calendar system. So that overall it also exchanges everything, so that then the tool itself can schedule everything right away in our calendar system. How does it look like? Let's quickly have a look at, like, from a candidate point of view, that's in the end what they get. They get an email with like a link, please schedule yourself, or like we want to meet you. And then they have like a very like personalized, we're working always with on the design, a very personalized like landing page, so they can do it via mobile, they can do it on their laptops, so they can like do it like right away within 2 minutes when they have the calendar available. So like when they click on it, they can right away see like which interviewers are available when, so they see right away which dates are possible for them. And they can also see, okay, well, like these are the dates where like they can schedule interviews. In the end, they get a confirmation and overall have scheduled themselves just about, when they are fast, just about in 30 seconds. Which really, in the like before that, was required like a lot of emails back and forth, confirmation and so on, and now like the system sends a confirmation and puts everything in the calendar of the interviewers right away. Talking about calendars, how does it look like? So for us, on the one hand, we have like a lot of, let's say, calendar invites which are blocked for the different interviewers, right? And we have on the other hand the big calendar block which goes out to candidate. So that's how it looks like for the candidate side and then also for internal side. So what the tool does, it blocks all the different things which are before were manual. So somebody had to go in and block like from 10 to 10:30 and had to block from 11 to 12 and so on and so forth. But now like the tool does everything and also sends out calendar invites to the candidates right away. And something which I find really cool is candidates can reschedule without a human being having to be involved. Because the system, like depending on like our preferences, we have created a preference that candidates can reschedule themselves once, and then like after that, the coordinator has to jump in. So they can actually say, I just confirmed it, but I have like tomorrow I have a dentist appointment, so I can't do that. They can go into the system and just reschedule themselves, and the tool does all the calendar changes and everything else around that. So that's how it looks like. So something which we found was very, very helpful and interesting for us was when like we are hiring a lot in tech. We are hiring a lot of like engineers, product managers, researchers, and so on. And what we always have had in the past is that when we want to test, for example, Java skills, we have like a long list of qualified and trained Java interviewers. And what the tool does is actually you can tell the tool, look, like let's just take like one interview, which is any interviewer who has like JavaScript tag. And with that, the tool actually looks at like when is the next person available, so it doesn't have to wait for person A who's maybe on vacation next week, but it actually looks at who's available the earliest and then like creates like an interview pipeline for this. But then also like what we can see here, you can also have fixed interviewers like the hiring manager or somebody from the team who's essential. But then overall like, we can also have in the end like long lists of qualified interviewers, and the system then like puts the different things together. What we can do is that we have also like recruiting metrics, so we can see, for example, which coordinator scheduled what, and that was something which was super helpful for us to really understand which coordinator is actually scheduling how much, so that on the one hand we are able to control workload way better, and on the other hand we can also have a look at like, okay, well, if somebody is very, very fast with the tool, how can we learn from this person to look at how can others adopt that. Then we can also have a look at like how many interviewers does an interviewer do, right? So how many, like for example, before that we had like a massive Google Sheet list with like all the different names, and the coordinators had to put in like, okay, well, this person already did 3 interviews this month, this person only 1, but now we have everything in one system. We can also like on a regular basis, for example, we celebrate hiring heroes, so all the people who helped us and did the most interviews, and we can like with that it just like helps us with pulling one report out of it. Then also it gives us real-time recommendations to say like, look, where do we have enough interviewers and why is the pipeline or like the process slowed down, which is very helpful for us. So, but then overall, like the tool is nice, right? The tool is a tool, but like what are the outputs? And something which we did in the beginning is we actually spent a lot of time with GoodTime together to understand what is the baseline, so where are we coming from, and what are we then measuring later on. And overall, what we said is like we have one in our candidate NPS survey, we have one question which says scheduling of my interviews is seamless. And again, like for us, when it's not a moment that matters or we add value, it has to be seamless and ideally automated. So this was like one of the key questions for us. And we had already before that like 72% positive answers from candidates, but now we already moved up to 84%. So we implemented it beginning of the year. So, and then probably the remaining 16% are, I think, standard when like scheduling is a bit more difficult. They have to fly in from different countries and so on. So it's not just like the tool of scheduling, but overall, this was something which was like a key success indicator for us, because with that also our candidate NPS score has increased a lot. Also, from an efficiency point of view, we recently measured. So at the moment, or since we implemented the tool, we were able to schedule like more than 30% more interviews with the same amount of coordinators. So that overall, like for a return on investment point of view, we're able to prove that yes, we can do more with the same amount of people. So our aspiration was not to reduce coordinators, but our aspiration was to give them more meaningful tasks and also to give them like a voice in the system and to create memorable experiences. While in the end, of course, like the tool has to be efficient because the tool costs also money for us. So our experience so far is based on around 30,000 interviews scheduled with the tool since beginning of the year, and we already see that like more than 90% of our coordinators are using it for all of their interviews. So there are very few exceptions where we don't use the tool. Time to schedule is also something which, like in the past, was never something which we really had a lot of data on. And what we see at the moment is that average time to schedule for us from the moment that the coordinator starts the process until the interview is confirmed at the moment is 19.4 hours. And something which always surprises me is that 10% of the interviews get scheduled within 9.1 minutes. And I think that's something which is really because it's a mobile-first platform. So when they get it, they can just like with 1 or 2 clicks just to get it done and get it scheduled. 50% get scheduled within 3 hours. And I think just thinking about like the 3, 4, 5, 6 emails, which are usually necessary to ping back and forth before like you found the right slot, that's for us was like a big game changer. And then 80% get scheduled within 23 hours. Of course, there are always people like who don't respond right away or so that then like the last 20%, like that's something which goes up. But that were results for us which were like super helpful and interesting. So looking at like the challenges, now we are working like with a new process, with a new tool since nearly 10 months. And the big challenges which we had is like on the one hand, like you have to get access to the interviewer's calendar, right? Because they have to share that. If the tool cannot access the calendar, the tool cannot really schedule properly. So overall, what we did is we created like a standard centralized email, which then our colleagues can like share their calendars with, so that then like we have a so-called TA-coordinator@zalando.de, and with the email address, like the interviewers can share the calendar. And so far with us, we haven't seen any big pushbacks or so, because like they share it with a standardized email, and we can then access the calendars and also work with them to make it more efficient. So overall, the big challenges are, as usual, like without a tool, is like very, very complicated on-site interviews with like multiple people, many like things going over different days, for example. Like that's usually a challenge for all the systems, because the system, as we have set it up, is mainly looking at like having a panel one after each other, and with that really having like a very efficient process. And when we have, for example, someone coming in like 4 days in a row every day at 5 p.m., that's something where the system struggles a bit, but that's something which we, for us, don't have so often. Then the last piece was like the executive interviews, right? Because like you don't get access to the CEO's calendar, doesn't matter what you do. And that's something which we have seen is as soon as like the interviewers have an executive assistant or a team assistant who's doing the scheduling, and where the calendar is just blocked completely, then the tool doesn't work. So we have to work with the executive assistants to make sure that when they put certain blockers in, so that they give the certain blockers a certain name, for example, interview block, so that the system knows that, yes, I can overschedule this. But that's something which we have also solved, so that even now, like today, all of our executive interviews also get scheduled with the tool. So the key learnings for us, automation of interviews is partly possible. You can't automate everything and just trust a tool completely. So you can do it faster, you can do it like more efficient, and overall like it works very well. But in the end, like you still need the coordinators doing the manual work and making sure that everything works. But their role has developed a lot from actually doing all these small tasks to overseeing the entire process and just jumping in when things are not working. Return on investment is positive, and overall efficiency is measurable, so that was something which was super important for us. The more standardized the process, the better. For us in tech recruitment, for example, we have a very standardized process. So we have, for example, like everyone has to go like through who's applying for a senior Java engineering role has to go through certain tech screening, and there is like a long list of interviewers who are qualified and trained for this. Then it works very well. Sourcing, screening, and on-site interview scheduling is possible. For us, like the sources, for example, they also use the tool to just like have an individual link. So they send it out so that people can schedule themselves for a first conversation with the sourcer. And that's also something which has proven to be very successful. Key learning number 2, in this sense, measure your baseline before implementation. And it was something which was in the end like a big game changer for us, because when we did in the beginning the efficiency study, we were equipped with data and we were equipped with really having proof that it works. And that was something which was also important for us for like the future investment decisions to extend. Motivated key users are important for success. I think that's something which has proven to be an absolute key success factor for us. So we have picked 3 coordinators who are like trained from on the tool intensively and who were like the ambassadors for the tool. And they were so excited after a while that just like their energy and their positivity around that has really like infected like the entire team, and in the end really created like a lot of positive drive. And then something which really was like a game changer for us was scheduling overnight is something which is really, really awesome. When colleagues leave in the evening and just like send out 20 interviews to schedule and arrive in the morning and 18 are scheduled out of the 20 and they don't have to do anything, then you have like true adoption from the coordinators because they really, really like it. So overall for us, happy candidate experience specialists. So they now really can concentrate on like adding really, really good experiences, and in the end really work efficiently as well with the tool. So thanks a lot. I hope it was insightful. I'm happy to answer any questions.